Welcome, listeners. You are here with Siobhan Hoover, Ana Rosa Rizzo Centino, and Candice Somay with KCAA 96.5 FM. And we're so lucky to have Candice here. I got to know her originally through kind of organizing circles and then found out that she's multi-talented and has her own business. So I actually have seen her myself for Reiki and kind of life coaching, consulting session. I have nothing but great things to say about her, and would love for you to just kind of share a little bit of who you are so our listeners can know who you are, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Candice Somay Perez, pronouns they, them, or she, her. And I am a daughter of a mother who was born in Taiwan and also a father born in LA with ancestry tracing back our most recent, like over 100 years ago from Mexico. I'm also a mother. I am as Ana Rosa mentioned, a Reiki energy healer and an astrologer and a coach.
Ooh, I know. I read her bio and I was like, I'm so excited to hear all about this. And I love your mixed background, like with the Taiwanese and the Mexican. I can relate to that because two sides of my family, they're all mixed. So you have you're culturally sound, you've got quite a bit there. So
yeah, and the mother side too, she's from Taiwan, but also has Chinese and Japanese ancestry. So as you probably can relate, like early in life, it can be a lot to be like, what do I do with all this? How can I connect with all this? And then as life progresses, you're like, oh, wow, it's actually really beautiful to have so much, rich, beautiful ancestry to tap into. So.
Yes. Well, it makes a gorgeous mix.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm interested in hearing about the astrology part of it. Can you tell us what got you interested in that and how you started and where you're at today with it?
Sure. Yes, I could talk astrology for the rest of my life, for days and days and days. So I first started, I will start by saying that for a long time, my concept of astrology was like, oh, that's like very white, SHIT. I don't know if I can cuss on here.
No.
I guess, no, okay. It's like stuff. Or I don't know if they'll bleep out the spelling too, but so yes, I just felt like it wasn't for me. I didn't really see feel any connection with it. But in 2015, 2016, right as around when I became a mother, actually, I started to really connect deeply with Toltec philosophy and Toltec spirituality, and kind of got what we would think of as like our signs or like our horoscope kind of read from the Toltec or the Aztec calendar. And it was only after really beginning to incorporate those symbols and archetypes and that worldview into my life and finding so much healing and so much like practical use from it, that one day I was kind of just like, I think, friends started getting into astrology. And so that was a little bit of a connection where I started to feel some trust with it. And then one day it kind of just clicked where I was like, it's really talking about basically the same things. It's a different system for organizing it, and it's a different sort of worldview. But in essence, we're connecting with the cosmos and the cosmic energies. And so once I kind of opened my mind to it, it's just grown so much in popularity in these last 5 to 10 years. And so, I'm like a big nerd and really into just always studying stuff and learning stuff. And so there was so much available to learn from. And yeah, right around like 2017, when my son was about 1 year old, I started just really diving into it for myself and just looking at my own chart, looking a little bit at his chart. And it helped me in some really big ways to make like really big, major life decisions. And yeah, it's been kind of just a love of mine ever since then. And then about 9 months, going on a year ago, was when I first started to kind of switch my lens to more of like a practitioner and thinking, okay, maybe I do, feel called to learn how to really give consultations and give astrology readings to people. So I've been doing that for several months now.
I'm interested.
Well, and Siobhan loves crystals. And is there like a connection between astrology and crystals? See, yeah, those are all crystals that she has right there.
Oh, wow. Oh my
That's her
gosh.
altar.
That's so
It's the
cool.
perfect setup in my house for them. Yeah, I just, I believe in frequencies, I believe in energy, and there has to be some science to behind it. And so once I started digging into that and really kind of finding, oh, like everything has a vibration, then it made sense to me, and it's so funny. My mom visited me this past weekend, and she's like looking around my house, and she's like, "Look, you're using these crystals, and this is not, she's very Christian. And so I was always taught that, astrology is wrong, using crystals, candles, that kind of thing, it's wrong. But I felt differently about it, obviously.
But if God made crystals, how could it be wrong?
It's from the earth, it's natural. So
Siobhan just had a birthday. We celebrated on the 4th.
I did.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday,
Thank
Aries
you
Queen.
so much. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we had a great time.
We went to glitter brunch.
Ooh, fun. That sounds amazing.
I'm interested to know, when you said you were looking at your chart for like your son, and what sort of things come up, or what do you see? I'm just curious about that, and how do you use that in your parenting with him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for my little one, I mean, I honestly like the way that I started approaching it with him is not totally how I like recommend now to people to approach it. Because with him, I really started to I would learn about sort of individual like planetary placements or planetary aspects, and I would Google that, right, and kind of read just from the internet and sort of start to piece together things about him. But what I have found to be a lot more helpful is to actually work with a more holistic reading of the chart. So but yeah, ways that it can be helpful though in parenting, and that I've found it to be really helpful. And it's honestly, it's like the same as the way that it can be helpful to us in our personal lives. Astrology is really, it's a powerful, beautiful tool, and tool and tradition to help us to organize and understand the totality of our experience. Right. It just helps us to put a map and kind of an organization onto everything, which the world we live in right now is so extremely overwhelming. So I think to have something that helps us to break it down and analyze things and come to a greater understanding is so helpful. So, applying it to our personal lives, it can help us to know ourselves and understand ourselves. And through that come to a greater acceptance and love and compassion for ourselves, which is that's everything, right?
Yes.
And I think it works the same with our children. When we apply it to our parenting, it can really help us to understand our kids better, to accept them, and kind of make peace with certain things. And I think most importantly, I would say it can really give us a guide for how to best support them. Right. Because sometimes the way that, it's a lot. Parenting is a lot. And how do you ever know if you're doing it right? And how do you ever know?
We don't get a manual.
We do not.
No instruction booklet. No instructions here.
No instructions. But to be honest, I do see the birth chart in some ways can be some bit of instructions. We still can't tell some people can tell the future. I cannot tell the future, through the chart. But yeah, it can help us to kind of know what ways to really guide them and what to really lean into when it comes to how we're loving them and supporting them.
Now I want to do Gloria's chart too. Because you helped me do my chart.
Yeah.
I'm like a super Cancer, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm an Aries then, but I'm a Sagittarius moon, and what is it? My ascending is in Scorpio. So kind of all over the place with that. But
Powerful, very powerful.
yeah, I was like, oh, okay, but it does help me gain a better understanding. I didn't think of, okay, like let me search out my children's birth charts. That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yes.
I use apps, mostly, just because I don't know what I'm doing. But my so maybe I'll do that on their phones and kind of like download the app and see what it says for them.
Yeah, and one place that I really like, would recommend like to start if people want, kind of guidance or tips of kind of where to start with their kids' chart. The moon is really important for little ones, for all of us, but I feel like especially, they say that the qualities of the moon will tend to kind of present themselves first in life. Like kind of later in life is when we come more into our rising, and even our sun, but there in childhood, we can like really see the moon more. And the moon is, it's so many things, but in astrology, it has to do with the way that we find safety and security in the world. And like, isn't that so much of what we're helping our children to build, like their baseline of security? And so having how we approach that with them and how we provide that sense of safety for them, having that informed by what their moon is and how they're going to really inherently respond to and like where they're going to find safety can be really helpful.
Yes. And if our listeners have no idea what we're talking about, can we guide them a little bit? So yeah, when I say like, my sun is in Aries, but my moon is in Sagittarius. Can you explain what that means just so that people...
Oh, sure. Yes. No, just the basic for people who don't speak. I don't know. Sometimes you like forget, like this is a different language. People don't know what you're actually saying. So if you think of like the moment that a person is born, the moment that you're born, if you picture a circle, right? Picture a wheel, and you're at the very center of that, and all around you is the whole sky. Right. So when we talk about the birth chart, it's a snapshot of the sky all around you the moment that you took your first breath. Right. And so that makes an imprint like you were talking about energies earlier. The planets all have their own distinct energies. And even though they're far, far, far away, we are very much connected to them and in relationship with them. Right. And so that energetic imprint of that exact alignment of the sky, the second you're born, it makes an imprint on you and on your life, right? And so this basically the sun sign means where was the sun the moment that you were born? What part of the sky was it in? And there's a certain energy to that part of the sky, right? The rising means what part of the sky was coming up over the horizon. So that's actually like way more personal than the sun because the sun's in the same sign, right? The same zodiac sign for like a month. But the rising sign changes every few minutes. Yeah. So you could be born on the same exact day as somebody, but if you're born an hour apart or even a few minutes apart, you can have a different rising sign. Mm-hmm. And that sets up like the whole sky.
But like the sun sign is what most people know.
Yeah.
Right. So like if you were anyone born in July, at least until like the 22nd, or I think you're a Cancer. So that's the part that most people know. But I think it's the rising that people are like, wait, what?
Yeah. It's because it's not like a bot. It's not like planetary body. It's just a point in the sky. It's whatever was coming up over the horizon. Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And then the moon would be also like the sign, the moon, where the moon was in. And these all signify different things. Yeah.
And what a beautiful full moon we just had. Yeah. And it's supposed to be a healing moon is my understanding. But when you talk about the planets being in relation to us, the way I understand it, that is specifically with the moon, because the moon controls the tide, so I'm like, if the moon controls the tide, how can it not have an effect on us? Right. 100%. Like it just makes sense scientifically.
Yeah. Like we're mostly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, our bodies are mostly water, right? So like if it can move oceans, why can't, You mean to tell me it doesn't have an effect on me?
100%.
So, yeah, I totally get that. Well, gosh, I love that.
Yeah, it was a beautiful full moon. And I like to think that they're all healing.
Mm.
I like to think that they're all the new moons, all the full moons, they're all like an opportunity for healing, you know.
Yes, I get all my crystals and I put my tray out. I make my moon water.
I love it. To have
Yeah,
rituals.
be at home doing weird stuff on a full moon.
All of us, all of us.
A little bit witchy over here.
Just some witchery.
A little bit.
Very godly witchery, though.
Yes.
Yes, using the powers for good, you know. That's what I like to think, at least.
Yes.
So we have to do station identification. We do this every 15 minutes. You are listening to Que Madre and Warrior Mother. We're missing Ellie Cortez with Bienestar CCC, and we are interviewing today Candice Somay on KZAA 96.5 FM. We're talking about astrology. We're talking about motherhood. We're talking about our little ones. We're talking about entrepreneurship. And can I ask about shibari?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can talk about shibari. Yeah, what do you want to know?
Well, because she just did a workshop with Pura Luna Apothecary, and I was very curious about it, but I'm like, is it okay for me to go if I don't have Japanese ancestry? You know, because
Oh, I love that question.
I guess I wonder, because that it is a cultural practice.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a cultural practice. And I guess a little bit background for those who might not know. So shibari is a form of Japanese bondage that was originally used like to tie up prisoners. But even so was done in I don't know if a ceremonial way is the right way to say it, but anyways, but over the years, it's become also an art form. It is something that can be used in a sensual and also sexual way. And I had been curious about it for a long time. And I saw that Pura Luna was having a workshop for it, and it was on my birthday. And I was like, oh, I'm going. This is my chance. And then after I even bought my ticket, I'm like, who's the instructor? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my dear friend.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, Diosa Eros is what her name that she goes by. She's a shibari instructor and also a sexologist and a coach. And so so we did the class. I also did a demo. I was like her model doing a demo. But your question about it as a cultural practice. I mean, I think that, I feel like that's a good question for like every practice.
Well, because
right?
there are things that become very trendy in this country,
Mhm.
like tantra, like yoga, all these things that get kind of butchered, you know, in the process of being introduced to a larger audience. And so I think it just, as those of us that are trying to learn an art form that comes from a different culture, it's important to recognize that we are guests in that culture and be humble and not try to appropriate.
100%. And I think you said it perfectly, and that it applies, you know, like you said, to any practice that we're interested in that doesn't come from our own lineage. Or even myself, even though I have Japanese ancestry, that doesn't mean that I automatically know everything about it and know how to be respectful toward it. It really comes from having that intention and those clear, you know, just doing our due diligence, you know, making the effort to learn about the origins and the original purposes, and, you know, any kind of protocols or things that might not be considered respectful, you know, in the actual cultural context. Yeah,
Diosa Eros was really cool. She was there also for the sleepover that Pura Luna did. We didn't actually spend the whole night there. It was just part of the night, but she was kind of there in the corner for consultation on whatever we wanted to ask her about. And she was very insightful. So that's cool that you know her.
Yes, I love her. We've known each other for a long time, actually met through learning about Mexican cultural, Mexican culture, like ancient Toltec culture, like years ago. Yeah. She's a mother too. You could interview her sometime.
I would love that.
How often does she come up here though?
You have to just get in touch with her and find out. She's a free spirit and she travels a lot. So yeah.
That is amazing. It sounds like somebody I want to meet.
Yes, definitely.
Wait, I want to know more about shibari. Is that something that you practice with a partner? Is it, you have touched on several ways that you practice that. It's like an art. I have no idea what it is. So
I'm like a beginner, like that was like last month or like a little over a month ago, and that was my first experience with it. But from what I've seen, you can tie yourself, you can practice tying yourself, but yeah, I think generally it's done with a partner. And it's really like um, again, I won't say too much because it's not like necessarily my area of expertise, but I know that there can be a lot of healing through working with how we relate with power, and control within
Surrender.
relationships. Yes, surrender, submission, and yeah, it can be. I felt that it was really healing for me to be I wasn't tying, I was being tied, and especially for it to be with a friend and someone who I really, really deeply trust. Just being able, especially as a mother, right? As a single mother, when like I'm always in charge of everything and got to do everything, and it's a lot of work all the time, to just be able to totally let go and be like, tell me what to do. You want me to put my hand there? Okay. And in a way where like I trust you, and it's yeah. It was very sensual and a wonderful experience. After the next like couple days, I even told Eros, I was like, I feel like something shifted in me. Like I feel more myself from just having that experience of being able to surrender. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was really beautiful that we get to interview you now after our last episode, because our last episode we were talking about big V energy, and I think as mothers, it's easy for us to like get so wrapped up in parenting and kind of forgetting the sensual and sexual aspect of ourselves and just the beauty that comes from that. And so just with everything that you do, I feel like you try to approach life in a really holistic way. And I think that's really great. So yeah, I was like, yeah, let's talk about it all. And since we're in our last 7 minutes of the show, I did want to ask you more about your journey through entrepreneurship and like what that's been like for you.
Yeah.
And any tips you can give to other mothers out there that are in the process of maybe starting their own business themselves.
Definitely.
Like we're starting a podcast. Your show is probably going to be one of the first shows on our podcast.
Oh,
so.
Amazing. Congratulations. That's so exciting. I feel so honored. Yes, I would love to talk about that. Do you mind if I say one other thing about the astrology and the parenting? Because I just wanted to make sure to convey this as I'm, because I'm still beginning with the being in service with astrology, and then especially with parents and looking at children's charts. And so it's really important for me to just say that for folks who are interested in doing that, which I think is wonderful, from my experience and from the counsel of like other more experienced astrologers, it's really important to keep in mind that just like in our parenting, sometimes things come up with our kids or we notice things in them and we get in our head and we get scared, and we get triggered and we start projecting onto them and going into a lot of what ifs and just like fear. There can be so much fear that comes up around mothering because that's our, we want the best for our little ones. And so the same can happen with astrology, whether you're looking at your own chart. And I think especially when you're looking at your kids' chart, there can be things that you see or that you hear that fear can come up, or different like projections can come up. Oh, they have this placement, with their planets. And so that means that they're going to experience X, Y, or Z in their life, right? Which may not necessarily be true. Like we really don't know for sure. And so I just wanted to be sure to say like, that I think it's so important to just be mindful of like what's coming up for you when you're looking at your child's chart or when you're getting your child's chart read. And if you find that you're having, really strong emotions like that coming up, to pause on it, put the chart away and just kind of ground so that we're not getting carried away with those kinds of projections. So, yeah.
Thank you for that bit of advice, though. That's so important because I know that I'm one to get carried away, and it's like, no, just put it down, take a breath, feet on the sand or something. Yeah, I take that. I did
Yeah.
that a lot. But yeah, so tell us about the entrepreneurship part.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
um,
So, oh gosh, so what do you want to know? About it? Like what?
I'm curious how you find time to do everything you're doing, because I think you have a full-time job, but then on top of it, you're doing your business, and you even have the time to put out a really thoughtful newsletter that, like, I can tell you spent a lot of time on. So I'm just wondering, like, how you're juggling it all.
That's a good question.
sign up for your newsletter.
Yes, yes. I know I'm like behind on one, but I think that
See, and I didn't
that
even
that
say
would
that.
be like my biggest piece of advice is like all the concepts of like feeling like I'm behind because I've placed the expectation on myself that I have to send one every new moon. Or for about 6 months I've just completed that project, but for 6 months I was doing weekly moon guides, which was a lot of work. You know, I was doing a day by day breakdown of where the moon was and what it meant. But coming back to this is my business. Like, this is my work. I'm actually the boss, and I actually can say, we're not doing that right now. That's
Right.
not due today. The
There is no
deadline is
deadline.
extended. Yeah. We're like, good job, you're done with that. Because with the moon guides, I originally planned to do that for a year. That was my kind of assignment to myself, to just do it for a year. And then last month I was like, no, I'm done. I'm tired. And so it's about balance, right? I'm reminded is balance doesn't mean that we're static in one place doing the same thing all the time. Balance means that we're making slight adjustments all the time, right? And so that's what I would say is I adjust a lot. I adjust my expectations of myself and of my business. Someone told me, oh, I think it was actually Ash, the owners of Pura Luna, mentioned to me recently, like, my business is 2 years old. Would I put these huge expectations on my 2-year-old child to be performing at the level of an 18-year-old? I wouldn't. And so I'm not going to put that on my business. And I feel like that's how I'm still here and still going and still feeling energized and great about it, is because I'm very forgiving of myself. Like, I've, of all the quote failures or things that haven't gone the way that I originally planned, at the end of the day, I'm always like, you know what? Nah, I did good. Like, this is good. We're doing great.
You can't label them as failures when you learn from that and you pivot, you adjust. It's never a failure. It's always just a learning experience and making your business better. I love that.
I feel like forgiveness and grace with ourselves is something that we talk about a lot on our show. I think because it's so challenging that we're able to extend grace and forgiveness to others, but for some reason it's extra hard to do it for ourselves. So I love that you've gotten to that place to be able to do that.
Yeah. And why is that? Why do we do that to ourselves?
Colonialism.
Yeah. Well, where do we start?
Patriarchy.
Where do we start? I know you guys paid me a compliment when we first came on, and I was like, oh, well, then I circled around to it and I just said, you know what? Thank you. So, I think that's also part of it, is that just accepting of, the compassion for yourself, and allowing yourself to just be in acceptance, is it's difficult. We're all working at it.
We are.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and the thing is, like, every stride that we make with it, one of my elders reminded me of this recently, like, as I make strides with that, as you make strides with that, like we help each other, like we, again, vibrationally, however you want to think about it, we're connected in community. We see each other, and it just makes it that much easier to all grow together.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, my goodness, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. I feel like we need to circle back around on this and have a greater discussion on it.
I would love to. Let me know anytime. Yeah, it's been so nice talking with you both. I feel like we could, could go on, but thank you.
Absolutely. Well, Ana Rosa.
You've been listening to Que Madre and Warrior Mother and our lovely interview with Candice Somay Perez. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be with you again next week, same time, same place, Thursday, 6 p.m. And thank you so much for listening.
Good night.
Yay.